Opening day is finally upon us, and in this video, first we're going to get Joe's thoughts on the Cal-Raleigh extension because he has not been able to talk about it yet. Then we're going to talk about the projected opening day lineup from us, what we think it's going to be, as well as just whatever final roster moves may be a part of this team. And we're going to wrap it all up by previewing the Oakland Athletics series as the Mariners start the 2025 season. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 177 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav Network. The Anderson and Nicole episode of the podcast, Jimble Boy. It was great to meet you guys at, was it the last game? It was either the last game or the second to last game of spring training out there in the heat. It was great to meet you guys and chat with you guys. Appreciate you guys being there. Also, if we took any pictures with any of you down in spring training, please send them our way so we can add them to this board behind me. But I am here with Joe. Joe, we're back in person.
We're here.
Back in Washington, ready for opening day.
I'm excited. It's my first opening day ever, which is kind of crazy. I assume it is. I don't have any distinct memories of going to an opening day before this year, so I'm happy that I can do that. Sharing it with you. It's very exciting. Gonna meet up with Jake, Raise the Trident. Gonna meet him for the first time. Gonna meet Chad from Touching Bases for the first time as well. We're gonna be, and Pint Size. Meeting Pint Size for the first time
Brennan,
as well.
Yeah,
Brennan. We're gonna be at Hatback before the game tomorrow.
4:30 or 5:40, 4:45 to 5:30. We will be down at Hatback / Victory Hall. I think we'll probably migrate it to Victory Hall because Hatback's gonna be really hard to get into. So if you guys are coming down there, be sure to stop in there and say hi to us if you are of age. While we're in the ballpark, so from 5:30 until probably like festivities usually start around 6:30.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be up there too long. Maybe like until like 6, maybe 6:15. We'll be up behind section 335 in the box score bar area. If you guys want to come up there and say hello as well, we're just going to be kind of chatting, talking some baseball, and meeting up with anybody who wants to meet up with us, and just kind of a little meet and greet thing. So that's kind of the plan for today.
I know there's some talk about, like, obviously if you see us around as well, like not just in those specific designated areas. If you see us, feel free obviously to stop us and say hello as just like a normal occurrence. But we need to talk. Maybe not we. I need to talk about the Cal-Raleigh extension. We were talking about, so I asked you before we recorded the previous episode's podcast, or maybe it was after, just talking about like what Alejandro Kirk's extension, like, did you see that? Like, what does that look like? What does that mean for Cal? And then we looked up his projected market value on Spotrac, and it was like $24 million. And we both were like cackling and like, oh, we're screwed.
We're never signing.
It's never getting done. And you said somewhere between like 16 and 20 million would be like where you would hope that they could get him at. And 6 years, $105 million was the final contract extension signed by Cal-Raleigh and the Seattle Mariners, which ends up being $17.5 million. So you were right on the money. And there is a contract breakdown. I don't know if you were able to say this while on stream because I don't think the information had come out yet. But there's a $10 million signing bonus and a $1 million salary for 2025. So think about it as $11 million.
Important to note, though, that $10 million signing bonus does not affect the Mariners' payroll. So that's not going to be a part of what they're going to be looking at the end of the year when they talk about how much money they spent this season. They're only going to look at that $1 million. That $10 million signing bonus is completely separate.
And then in 2026, 11 million, 2027, 12 million, 2028, it doubles, basically goes to 23 million, 2029, 23 million, and then 2030, 23 million with a 2031, $20 million vesting option with a $2 million buyout. It's a player option in 2031 there. That's a great deal. That is a great deal to get arguably the best catcher in baseball for. You buy out several years of free agency, 3, at basically what, like $70 million essentially is what that math adds up to. Cal could have got that in the open market very easily. You give Cal stability and familiarity with the Mariners organization, and you give him, confidence that you're like, hey, we want you here. And what he gives you in return, I think, is a slight discount. I mean, given the Spotrac market value, $24 million, I mean, he's taking $7 million less. But I assume that's operating under the pretense that it would be him on the open market, less about buying out arbitration years. But regardless, a great contract to get the captain, a face of the Mariners franchise for years to come, obviously until 2031, basically. And if he continues beyond that, that's great. But what I think is the most important aspect is it shows, and maybe we're reading into it too much, and I think Lyle and TJ talked about it on Marine Layer a little bit. It's like, is this a changing of, maybe not change of heart, but a change of philosophy or perception around the Mariners organization with their players? And maybe this is them trying to get in good graces with some of the existing players on the roster for other extensions, or maybe that other free agents that want to play with Cal, or pitchers that want to pitch to Cal. Obviously, Julio's on the roster still as well. Like, he's going to be a Mariner for a long time. Getting cornerstone franchise level players to extend and stay, that feels like a step in the right direction, especially after they moved on from Mitch Haniger, which is like a cut your losses. You have to eat that, whatever. Signing Cal to an extension seems like them trying to continue moving forward in terms of player relationships.
Which I think is important because, like you mentioned, there's a lot of the core on this team that is quite good that the Mariners need to build around, but they also need to be sure they can keep them. They already did that with Julio. They have now done that with Cal. They've done that even with, like, Victor, for example, signing his extension, J.P. Crawford, Dylan Moore. They've extended all of those guys. It is now time to start working on the pitchers, and I think this is the absolute best way you could start doing it. Because if you tell the pitchers, hey, you're going to be able to pitch to Cal for the next 6 years, all the guys love Cal catching, it sounds like. I mean, he's the best catcher in baseball. I think that, especially with Logan specifically, because they are best friends, it goes a long way in trying to make sure that they can lock him up. Now, I don't want to get dive too deep into what a Logan extension would look like. We'll talk about that on a different podcast, maybe. But I do want to ask you the question, Joe. Do you think this extension is, obviously the Mariners wanted to do it for a while, but is it directly correlated to the Nintendo patch?
I don't know. That's hard to say, because it feels like if they had the Nintendo patch lined up, they would have done something sooner. Mm-hmm. And Divish, I think, confirmed that they hadn't talked to Cal about an extension all but March 17th. So just a little over, as you guys are hearing this, 10 days ago, which would have been 8 days before the extension was signed. So they got it done in under a week. Mm-hmm. If the Nintendo stuff happened in a quick turnaround, like, oh, we need a jersey patch, they were like, cycling through options of, what brands or companies wanted to work with them, and they picked one finally. Maybe then they got, like an extra for this year, say like $11 million, because the signing bonus plus the $1 million for his player salary. Maybe that's where it factors into. So I could see it being a like I'm not going to be surprised either way. If the patch didn't happen, or it was Starbucks, or it was Boeing, or it was a different one, doesn't matter. I don't know if it would have affected it, but if it does, good. I think that shows like good grace in the idea of like what the patch represented. Something that you harped on it about is like, if they're not spending the money that they got from the patch, what's the point of the patch? Mm-hmm. What's the point of the advertisement, essentially? So if it is directly correlated, awesome. That means that they're taking the money and putting it, allocating it where a lot of the fans wanted it to go, which was to probably the fan favorite player on the team currently in Cal Raleigh.
Yeah. I think that along with the new Root Sports streaming package could maybe play a role in what happened here with them signing Cal. I think that the other interesting part of his contract is that he starts making a lot of money in 2028, which, yes, would have been his first year, I believe his first free agency year, but also is the year that Luis Castillo's money comes off the books, which is roughly the same amount of money as Cal is making there. So basically they're just trading Luis Castillo's contract for Cal Raleigh's contract. When you look at catchers and extensions, we all feel like there's a point in Cal's career where he's going to have to move to first base. That's just something that we'll have to, like Joe Mauer, Buster Posey. Cal's caught more games than anybody over the past couple of years, and that can definitely cause some wear and tear on your legs. I think that as Cal, because at the end of this contract, he'd be 33 or 34, depending on if that vesting option comes through, he would probably have to move to first base in the last year or two of that contract, which is fine. Hopefully, you have somebody up there that can kind of take over, whether that be Harry Ford at that point, or even like a Josh Caron coming up at that point. I think that obviously the Mariners will worry about that when they get there, but you're going to want to keep that bat in the lineup. And I think it's interesting kind of the way the contract is broken down, knowing breaking the contract down, knowing that at the end of it might be you're paying a first baseman,
Yeah,
instead of a catcher, which is fine. But Cal's numbers as a first baseman compared to as a catcher, very different. You would like him to hit probably like 240, 250 with the same amount of power as a first baseman, and not strike out maybe as much.
Sure.
But as a catcher, his numbers are fantastic. You don't see numbers like that in baseball. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
I think when we talked with Lyle and TJ, when we went on Marine Lair over the off season, we kind of talked about how a contract extension breaking down each year, or when you'd want to pay Cal more. And I mentioned front loading it because you're paying him for his catching years, and then later in his timeline for that extension, you'd be paying him likely to be a DH or transitioning to first base. I think you take the trade-off in this situation where you're paying him less early on for the more like prime aspect of his career. I will say, even with like if he does transition to first, or he gets off his legs a little bit earlier, and like Harry Ford does like kind of stick with the Mariners as a catcher, and like they kind of like split time with the role going into 2027 roughly, would be like my guess, where like Harry Ford's maybe catching a little bit more than Cal, or maybe about the same. If Cal's less on his, like his body's getting used less, like wear and tear wise as a catcher, the offensive numbers could come up. That's the idea. And that's not always the case. Like some players, I mean, Randy's talked about, he doesn't love DHing because he doesn't feel like he's getting enough, like, you know, practice, repetition, whatever, where like you don't hit as well as a DH because like that's just not part of your routine. Whether or not that's like how you know valid that really is, or like when Teo's with the Mariners, like we talk about, like he should just DH instead of having to worry about fielding, because like his numbers as a DH were like insanely better than his time spent in the outfield. With Cal transitioning off of catcher eventually, because that's just the path that most players find themselves on when they are catching that much, I would expect the offensive numbers, like you're saying, to maybe get closer to what you'd expect out of a DH or first base type, where the average can come up, the strikeouts go down a little bit, and maybe the power stays about the same, like, you know, 25 to 30 homer pop. Like that's suitable, so long as the average is closer to like 240, 250, like you're saying.
Right. I think that's kind of the best way to look at it. And again, this is something that we can delve into later on in this contract. We don't need to do it right now. Let's shift gears here, because it is opening day. Cal Raleigh's going to get a massive ovation here on opening day. But man, a long off season of pretty much nothing happening. We're finally back to business as usual with you know, kind of how we're working out these podcasts and whatnot. For opening day, Joe, the roster's pretty much set. At the time of recording this, it hasn't been made official. It might be by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
Overall, let's talk about the lineup first and how we expect it to go. Roster Resource has it as well. I might have a change in here that I want to talk about, but we'll see. So Roster Resource has Victor Robles playing right field leading off. I feel like that's chalk. I feel like the first five are chalk. So then it's Julio in center field, batting 2, Cal Raleigh catching, batting 3, Randy Arozarena in left field, batting 4. That's where I think things might change.
Oh.
And now maybe not for opening day.
Okay.
But I think that overall, I think that you could put Luke in left field, have Rowdy play first base, and Randy DH.
Okay.
You're better defensively if you do that.
Yes, I don't necessarily disagree. I would be curious to look at Randy's numbers as a DH, as something that I mentioned like just a minute ago. Whether or not it is true or not, how if they are inflated or deflated in any shape or form. But yeah, the first 5, at least name wise: Robles, Julio, Cal, Randy, Luke. I don't know why I chose to only say Robles' last name. Vic. Those 5 make sense. And position-wise, I think that's probably what they go with. Honestly, just because
it's opening day.
It's opening day. I think you want Randy out there and left to like be on the field with his outfield teammates, right? Like you want those vibes to be that high. I would like if Randy plays 140 games, I expect 100 of them to be in the outfield. I think. Okay. I think 40 DH days is probably good enough. Yeah. Would be my guess. But after that, they've got Polanco at third, batting 6th, Raditz DHing, batting 7th, Ryan Bliss, opening day second baseman, batting 8th, and then JP batting 9, playing shortstop. Are you making any changes there?
Honestly, no. I think I'm leaving it exactly how it is. I don't think there's a better option. There's not a better option on the bench. Um, Especially because it is going to be Luis Severino on the mound, right-handed pitcher. We could maybe see Rowdy and Mitch Garver kind of platoon as a the DH position, depending on what handedness the pitcher is that's starting that game. But no, I think that the only thing that I could see possibly changing, and I don't like it, is Donovan Solano playing second base over Ryan Bliss.
No shot.
Don't think so?
No shot.
No?
I don't think so.
You get his bat in the lineup.
Yeah, but it's not that Solano's splits are bad. I think they're fine. But Solano's going to start the second game. Don't want to get too ahead of like the overall series preview, but Solano's starting the second game of the year. I don't think they're worried about getting his bat in there on opening day. I think getting Bliss, the opening day start, worked super hard all off season, was up and down a fair amount last year, put in a ton of work. I think all that he's done to win the second base job, I wouldn't want it stripped of him by, not to say that Donovan's, like, if Dylan Moore had won second base out of camp, I would be fine with Bliss being on the bench. I don't think Solano won it over Bliss, if that makes sense. And given where we see Solano's value more so as a first baseman against left-handed pitching, that's where I see Solano making the majority of his starts out. Like, yeah, he could play second base every once in a while. He could go stand at third and he won't kill you for, a handful of games. But I think they've got the lineup pretty much spot on. And obviously, the bullpen is like the last bit that we need to kind of iron out because we know the starting five. They've already announced the order. And it's no surprise that Gilbert obviously gets the nod on opening day. Then Castillo, Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, and then Emerson Hancock. So this first 4-game set against the Athletics, you'll see all four. The first 4 with Hancock starting the first game against the Tigers in the second game of the year. Or second game of the...
Second series
of the year. But the bullpen is where these final 2 spots may come into play.
Yeah, I do want to touch on the fact that Miles Mastrobuoni does make the team here, which was something we've talked about. He does kind of get that final roster spot. Obviously, we've talked about it before, being like maybe Shenton or Canzone, but all those guys were sent down. Miles Mastrobuoni does get the job there. He could play wherever the heck you want him to play, which is really nice for the Mariners to have him and Dylan Moore on the bench. Both guys can play literally wherever you need them to be. Both could be defensive replacements for you, which is probably good for a team that has...
Or pinch running.
Yeah, Demo specifically. Yeah. I think that we could see Dylan Moore take over at third and Miles Mastrobuoni take over in left on opening day if the Mariners have a lead late. Just defensive replacement wise. But yeah, like you mentioned, Joe, moving on to the bullpen here. It's going to be pretty chalk here to start. So Andres Munoz as the closer, of course, Colin Snyder, Gregory Santos, Trent Thornton, Taylor Saucedo, and Gabe Spire. They're locks. Those are the guys that we were like, yeah, they're going to be in there. It was those final 2 spots, and we thought maybe it could end up being Casey Legumina or Drew Pomerantz. Roster Resource has it as Edward Bizardo and Carlos Vargas. Do you agree with that?
I think so. I think they're out of options, which is the main thing, and I don't think the Mariners would choose to DFA either of them without seeing something out of them to start the year. If Vargas makes 3 appearances and he walks 5 batters, yeah, he's DFA'd. He's DFA'd immediately, and that's fine. Whether or not he clears waivers, that's not the point. But with the way that the roster is constructed right now and the pitchers that they chose to send down and or release, Bizardo and Vargas are your 7th and 8th spots in the bullpen on opening day, and if you have a big lead, you might see them on opening day. If it's close, you're not going to see either of them. Nope. I don't think.
They're just garbage time.
They are, you're up 5, you're down 5, or it's the 14th inning, right? Like you are deep in your bag, and not in a good way if you're throwing out Bizardo or Vargas in most cases. Not to say that we're like expecting them to be awful relievers, but they're the 7th and 8th men out of the pen for a reason. They're the most expendable. They're the most likely to be DFA'd or traded or released, whatever, when Brash comes back, when Troy Taylor's ready, if Jackson Kowar's ready, if they're struggling. Those are the expendable pitchers, relievers on this team.
There is one potential thing that could be different here, and more than likely he was just flying up because he's going to AAA. But how many seats are on that plane?
I'd hope.
You think there's enough for both teams?
I mean, it's 52 seats. And then
plus
coaches,
all the coaches, and yeah.
You're looking at like what, 80 seats needed? There's enough.
You think so?
I think so.
This all stems from an Instagram story from Sarin Lau, right-handed pitcher. He was on the plane with Julio and with Jorge Polanco sleeping.
Yeah.
You know, and I was looking at it and I'm like, yeah, probably going to Tacoma, but did Sarin Lau maybe make this baseball team over something? Because honestly, like Carlos Vargas, you know, I could see Sarin Lau coming up for Carlos Vargas. I would have just assumed it would have been Casey Legumina at that point. But does he have any options, Joe?
No.
Sarin
Lau does not have any options. I mean, I assume he was signed to a minor league contract, right?
Probably.
Where it's like he's signed to a minor league deal. He can probably opt out and seek a major league contract from another team after his sent through waivers or designation for assignments, I guess. But he's not on the 40-man. So like the relievers that are on the 40-man that likely will shuffle if Bizardo, Vargas struggle, or if there's an injury are, like we mentioned, Legumina. Cody Bolton is still there. Mm-hmm. You have Hagen Danner and then Will Klein. So notably, like Shintaro Fujinami, not on the 40-man roster. So if they wanted to add him at any point, because he has options. If they wanted to add him or Trevor Gott, Austin Kitchen, any of things, someone would have to be removed from the 40-man roster. And that like, how often do you really see a move like that early on in the year, unless you're really down bad for relievers?
Yeah, that's true. I'm kind of shocked we didn't see any moves made. In terms of this, I don't really know what all relievers. Ryan Yarborough was one that I would have liked. He signed with the Yankees. I think would have been fine. Dane Dunning is another one I think the Mariners could go out there and get. I Bleav he's still a free agent. So there were some pitchers that were released by their teams that I think would have been fun for the Mariners to go out and acquire. But nonetheless, that's kind of what the roster is looking like for opening day. Give me a prediction, Joe. Final score.
Final score, opening day. Luis Severino on the bump for the Athletics. Logan Gilbert on the bump for the Seattle Mariners. Celebrating Cal's extension. Maybe a Gilbert extension if they really get crazy with it. Celebrating a Nintendo patch. People watching on the Root Sports streaming app. I'm selling out. I'm shilling for like a 7-2 victory on opening day for the Seattle Mariners.
7-2. Okay. Any notable, you know?
I think so. I saw the home run video. Like, who's gonna hit the first home run of the season? Did you see that?
I didn't watch it, but yeah, I saw it.
Did you see people like Jake quoted it and said Robles bottom one on a 2-2 count. Like the first AB of the season is a homer. Would go absolutely hard. I think the first homer of the year will come in the 5th inning, and it's going to knock Severino out of the game, and it will be courtesy of a 3-run home run by Randy Arozarena.
I'm in. And they're going to hit the silly. Okay, interesting. I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to say the first home run of the season is hit in the bottom of the 2nd it's a 2-run shot by one Jorge Polanco. Polo.
Okay.
Gets into one on opening day. Something about them, you know, guys, you're like Adam Frazier had a really good opening day a few years ago. I'm just saying, like, these guys, I think Polo is kind of set to have a decent little bounce back here. Why not? But Joe, so game 1, we think 7-2. I'm going to call it a 5-3 victory.
Okay.
Let Munoz get the save.
Okay. The save on opening day. Sure.
I think that maybe we let Colin Snyder give up a run or two there.
Oh,
I know. I don't want to see Logan give up a run after he signs his massive extension on the podium outside.
What do you think? He goes 6, strikes out like 5?
5? He's striking out at least 9.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
Athletics have a pretty potent lineup. They're a decent lineup. You're looking for who asked?
I can't find who asked, Joe. He's striking out 9.
Okay.
Game 2 on Friday night. Obviously, the pageantry of game 1, you know, of opening day. There's nothing quite like it. The Mariners do it so well. But game 2, Luis Castillo versus Jeffrey Springs, left-handed pitcher acquired from the Tampa Bay Rays, right?
Yep.
During the offseason. Obviously, Luis going here. How we feeling?
I feel good about that matchup. I'll be curious to see like the lefty versus righty matchups and how Dan plays that compared to previous years. But like I mentioned when we were breaking down the roster, I think Solano makes a start this game, whether it be at DH or first base, and then Garver probably gets the other start, with Raley and Rowdy probably being on the bench in this one. If they put Dylan Moore in over Ryan Bliss, I wouldn't be surprised. But I think that's kind of like where like those 3 substitutions is what I would expect for the second game of the year. Just like it's a good litmus test to see where Dan Wilson and, you know, the lineup construction will go. But with Castillo on the bump, not getting opening day, I'd be curious to see how he's looking.
Yeah.
Not that any particular reason that I think he's going to be not as good this year, but we've all seen, or I don't know if we all, maybe that's a poor choice of words. The plateau, I think, is setting in on the Rock, if that makes sense. I think as it's and it's a fine plateau to hit. A 3-win pitcher, like a 3.5 to 3.7 ERA. You just have to hope that he's not giving up the long ball. And there's some guys in this Athletics lineup that can really jump all over it, like a Brent Rooker, a Lawrence Butler, who got an extension this offseason. I mean, Bleav had a great year. Shea Bangaliers is a problem.
Look out for Jacob Wilson.
Sure. I mean,
have a big year.
Roster Resource has him batting 8th, which he'll be batting 2 by the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
More than likely, given his bat to ball skills. Struck out twice in 50 some odd ABs in spring training. So I think game 2 will be a bit closer.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think the Mariners come out with a victory. I'll say 4-3.
Okay. I think Julio goes yard for the first time in this game, off of Jeffrey Springs, probably pretty early in this game. I'll give the Mariners a 6-5 come from behind victory in this one. I think that maybe Luis gets a little roughed up in this start.
Okay.
Not to say he has a bad start, but it's not a quality start from Luis Castillo. And then the come from behind victory, maybe even our first walk off of the year. All right.
That's similar to the Red Sox series last year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was it game 2 or game 3?
I think it was game 3. Okay. But either way,
it was a Julio walk off.
It was his first of his career to center field. Before we move on to the next game, how would you change the lineup if you
substitutions that I made?
Right.
So I would sub in Solano, Garver, and Dylan Moore. I probably, looking at the lineup, Robles is still leading off. Julio's still batting 2. I feel like Cal did enough against lefties last year to warrant still batting 3rd and have that flexibility within the lineup later when a pitching change does happen, where a righty then comes in and Cal then can swing around to the left side. So I keep him at 3, keep Randy at 4. I think I move... I think I move Polanco up to 5.
Okay.
And then do Garver 6, Solano 7. Oh, do I move J? I don't think J. I think JP stays at 9.
I think you leave him there. I think he's a great 9.
Yeah, and I think Ryan Bliss stays at, or Dylan Moore stays at 8. So I think you just move Polanco up 1 and then plug in Garver and Solano at 6 and 7. That's what I would do.
I think that's exactly what I would do too. I might have Solano hit ahead of Garver, but either way, either way, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on now to game 3, Bryce Miller's first start of the year versus Osvaldo Bido, a right-handed pitcher for the Oakland Athletics. Couple of righties on the mound.
You've said that twice, and I've actively omitted saying the place because it's not there anymore.
The Oakland Athletics. And I would assume that they probably go back to the opening day lineup.
Yeah. In
this game. Excited to see what Bryce can bring. Is this another 640 start? It is. A couple of 640 starts after the 710 because they've got to do the pageantry on opening day. This is a Saturday game, our first weekend game of the year. Excited to see what Bryce Miller can do. Do we think the Mariners mop this series?
Listen. I don't want to be drinking any Kool-Aid or have any really big copium to start the year. If there's ever a 4-game set to set the tone as a mop to start the year, it would be against a divisional team against the Athletics. Mm-hmm. The Athletics are a good team. I think they could scratch 500 this year if things go well for them. But I think every single pitching matchup so far, you have an advantage. And I think this... Is this the biggest disparity in pitching matchup?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Miller versus Beat. Like, Miller's insane. That's your number 3. He would be your 4 if Kirby was healthy, which is crazy to think about.
He'd be a 2 on most rosters.
Exactly. So I think this is a good way to set the tone for the Mariners if the intensity that has been praised all spring with Dan Wilson and the new hitting coaches and just the new hitting philosophy and all that. I think it'd be a great way to set the tone. I don't think a mop is happening.
Me neither.
but it's nice to dream about it. There's going to be, like you can't win every game. You can't expect to win every single game. That's unrealistic for a full 162. Whether they drop this game or the next, I do think they win both first games.
Yep.
But I think maybe the bullpen lets them down in this game of some sort, or maybe Bryce is trying out his cutter and it just ekes out over the plate in the wrong way. Or maybe the offense just isn't fully there after another, like a third night game going for their third night game in a row. I'll just take this as like a cheeky little 3-1 loss for the Mariners.
Okay.
Still a quality start for Bryce, I think, but offense doesn't do enough.
If I had to pick one game for the Mariners to lose in this series, it'd actually be the day game. On Sunday, it is going to be Bryan Woo versus J.P. Sears, who the Mariners have seen quite a bit, but J.P. Sears, good pitcher. I think that this is the game where the bullpen kind of lets you down, right? Because you're not going to be able to have a whole lot of guys go back to back. You probably don't have Cal catching in this game because it's a day game after a night game. Mm-hmm. He may be DHing, who knows? And so there's just going to be a lot of moving parts here. First day game of the year, I could definitely see them going and bringing in like a Gabe Spire or something, and he gives up a homer or somewhere along the way or something like that. Just after Bryan Woo puts together a decent start. I don't think it's going to be a quality start. I think he'll probably go 5, and maybe give up 2 or 3 runs.
Okay.
But I will be interested to see what the Mariners offense can do versus J.P. Sears, who we know they've had trouble against in the past. He's been a pretty damn good pitcher for the Athletics over the past couple of years. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 4-2 loss.
Okay. We're keeping it close.
Right.
I think the day game shout is a good strategy. And it's another lefty as well. So whether you see Solano in there or if it's Dylan Moore getting another start, you mentioned Garver. I imagine they'd probably just give Cal a day off because they don't have a day off. I mean, yeah, it's a day game going into a night game going to the following series on Monday against the Tigers, but 4 games in a row to start the year, I feel like getting Cal a day off his feet and maybe a pinch hit opportunity is where I would expect. Maybe with the game on the line, down 4-2, late.
A pitch from Acevedo.
Maybe a pitch from Acevedo comes in. A drive deep. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited overall for this series to get underway. Just it marks the beginning of a long, grueling, arduous season, but I would rather spend most of my days and most of my nights caring about the games happening than the money that they don't spend in the off season.
Yeah, I mean the off season was straight up awful
for the most part.
We had nothing to talk about all off season except for some trades that the Luis Castillo to the Red Sox trade that never freaking happened.
Yeah.
Or they were talking about the trade with the Cubs or the White Sox, Nico Horner, etc. Nothing ever materialized with that, which whatever. But at the same time, it made the off season kind of spending the last month in spring training was great and all, and I loved not having to care about the outcome of the games. I know the Mariners didn't have a good record. I don't know what it was.
They finished, I think, tied for last in the Cactus League.
With the White Sox, right?
Yeah.
But when they played the White Sox, they put up like 14 runs. So the Mariners scored the second most runs in all of spring training, if not the first. I actually haven't looked to see how many runs the Royals scored. But the Mariners scored 199. The Royals, I think, only needed to score 2 runs to get to 200 in their last game. I'm assuming they did that. So yeah, I'm excited though to be pissed off at this team again. I'm excited to be mad online about whatever moves this team, whatever Dan does, and be mad about it,
Mm-hmm.
Or if Julio's swinging out of his ass again and just super off balance or whatnot. I'm ready to be mad about that. I'm ready to get hurt again, Joe.
I don't think we're gonna get hurt.
No?
I mean, some days we will. And, maybe the cosplaying as a jaded Doomer style fan is not gonna go well for me if I do choose to do that. But I'm optimistic, and I think that's just like maybe painfully optimistic at this point. I like where the team's at.
Give me a record prediction.
92-70.
All right.
That's what my dad said last night. So I'm gonna stick with Floyd on this one. He said, he texted me yesterday while I was at work. He goes, the Mariners will win the West, and he spelled it WHEN. And then he texted me again. He goes, oops, I meant win, WIN. And then I came home and I asked him, what's the win total? He goes, what? I'm like, what win total is going to win the West? He goes, 92. And I'm like, all right.
All right. Sounds good. I feel better about this team after going to spring training than I did prior to spring training.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have them in a wild card spot going, oh gosh, 87 and 75.
Okay. I mean, so long as they make the playoffs, as their mantra is this year, just get in, I will take a playoff berth.
Me too.
Hell yeah.
Happy opening day to all of you guys. That's going to do it from us here on episode 177. Really looking forward to seeing you guys in the ballpark. Remember, we'll be behind section 335 in the box score bar or whatever it's called. Hope to see you guys there, and go Mariners.